Imagine living in a world where beauty was measured by how tightly you could crush your ribs, where lovers exchanged blood instead of rings, and where entire kingdoms judged marriage by the shape of a person's skull. Across centuries, cultures have invented courtship, fashion, and beauty rules so bizarre they seem almost unreal today. From powdered wigs made of mouse nests to secret love codes hidden in fans, these weren't just trends. They were acts of obsession, vanity, and control. Welcome to history's strangest standards of desire. 1. In Victorian England, women used arsenic-laced wafers to achieve a ghostly pale complexion, believing deathly whiteness was the mark of pure beauty. The poison slowly thinned their veins and blurred their eyes, yet the frail, trembling look became a fashion statement of fragile nobility. Doctors warned, but vanity ruled. Every bite of arsenic promised one more day of elegance, one step closer to eternal youth, even if it meant dying beautifully. 2. In 16th century Japan, samurai wives painted their teeth jet black using a mixture of iron filings and vinegar called *ohaguro*. This symbolized loyalty, sexual maturity, and eternal devotion. To the Western eye, it looked monstrous, but in Japan, white teeth were linked to demons and deceit. The black smile was considered elegant, mysterious, and loyal to one man until death. Women wore their vows not on their fingers, but in their mouths. 3. In ancient China's Tang dynasty, the fashion of binding women's feet began. Tiny lotus feet, no longer than 4 inches, symbolized beauty, obedience, and high status. Girls as young as 5 had their bones broken and wrapped in silk for years. They walked in agony, but each step was a performance of perfection. The smaller the foot, the greater her marriage value. Pain became prestige, and mobility the price of attraction. 4. In 18th century France, powdered wigs weren't just symbols of style, they were status towers. Aristocrats stuffed them with scented powder, flour, and sometimes live insects, while mice nested inside the curls. Some wigs reached over 2 feet tall and required scaffolding to maintain. The higher your wig, the higher your social worth. But under candlelight, the powder often ignited, turning vanity into fire. Fashion burned, literally. 5. In Renaissance Italy, women plucked their entire hairlines to appear more noble and intelligent. The ideal woman had a vast, smooth forehead, so mothers shaved their daughters' brows and lashes too. Beauty was an erasure. The less you looked human, the closer you were to divine. Faces became pale canvases of submission and intellect, emotion erased in the name of perfection. Every missing hair whispered obedience to beauty's cruel logic. 6. In 15th century England, men and women wore perfumed gloves soaked in animal fat and ambergris. The scent was intoxicating and dangerously flammable. Nobles flaunted them during dances and court appearances, unaware that a single candle spark could ignite their attire. Yet burning alive was considered a lesser tragedy than smelling ordinary. The perfume's danger made it erotic, the risk itself a symbol of passion's fire. 7. In 18th century Austria, noblewomen wore face patches shaped like stars, moons, and hearts to hide pockmarks from smallpox. But their placement became a secret code of seduction. A patch on the cheek meant flirtation, near the lips meant invitation, on the forehead meant pride. The face turned into a map of desire, and men learned to read it like scripture. Even scars became art under the rules of temptation. 8. In ancient Egypt, both men and women painted their eyes with malachite and kohl, believing it not only beautified but protected them from evil spirits and disease. The green and black pigments shimmered under the desert sun, turning faces into amulets of mystery. But the makeup contained lead, slowly poisoning the wearers who adored it. Even in death, their mummies still wore it, because beauty was meant to outlive the flesh. 9. In 19th century France, some aristocrats injected parasitic tapeworms to stay slim. They believed the worms would consume excess food, granting a delicate figure without effort. Ads even sold sanitized tapeworm eggs in capsules. Women fainted from malnutrition but praised the results. Thinness was worshipped like holiness. Their mirrors reflected bones and suffering, yet they smiled, proud to have beauty that eats itself. 10. In medieval Germany, brides wore crowns made from the bones of animals, wolves, deer, and sometimes even birds, symbolizing fertility, strength, and devotion. Each bone carried a spirit blessing the marriage. Some believed the skull fragments whispered at night, protecting the bride from infidelity. The wedding kiss sealed not just love, but a pact with the dead. Beauty in those nights was half divine and half haunting. 11. In Georgian England, women wore beauty patches shaped like hearts, stars, and ships made from velvet or silk. But these weren't mere decoration. They signaled political allegiance. A patch on the right cheek meant loyalty to the Tories, the left to the Whigs. A single misplaced mark could get you publicly ridiculed or even banned from gatherings. Every glance was a political statement painted on the skin, a game where beauty and rebellion wore the same mask. 12. In ancient Persia, noblemen perfumed their beards with amber and rose oil, then braided them with gold dust. The longer and richer the beard, the greater the man's honor and divine favor. Some would burn incense under their chins before royal audiences to release the scent as proof of luxury. Beards weren't just hair, they were spiritual banners of masculinity and devotion. Shaving one's beard meant disgrace, a symbolic death of dignity. 13. In Victorian America, women used belladonna drops in their eyes to dilate pupils, creating an innocent, wide-eyed look. The name means beautiful woman, but the poison blurred their vision, caused hallucinations, and eventually blindness. Yet fashion magazines praised it as a secret of irresistible charm. Men admired the hypnotic gaze. Women went blind to maintain it. Beauty demanded its tribute, and the eyes paid first. 14. In 18th century Venice, courtesans and noblewomen wore masks called moretta, small oval black velvet masks held in place by biting a button inside the mouth. It silenced them completely, turning the face into a mysterious void. Their beauty was wordless, their allure mute. The mask made them desirable precisely because it erased their voice, a haunting symbol of how silence itself became seductive. 15. In 19th century Korea, women crushed nightshade berries to dye their fingernails a deep crimson known as *bong ***. It was believed that if the color lasted until autumn's first rain, their love would remain unbroken forever. Young lovers competed to preserve the tint, guarding it like a flame. Every flake that faded was a countdown to heartbreak. Their fingers became the hourglasses of devotion. 16. In 18th century Russia, empresses powdered their faces with ground pearl dust, believing it infused their skin with moonlight. The shimmering glow was intoxicating, but pearl powder contained toxic mercury. It corroded their veins from within, leaving a faint silver sheen on corpses. Yet, to glow under candlelight meant to rule. Death's shimmer became elegance, and the empire glistened on poisoned skin. 17. In ancient Mayan culture, parents pressed boards on infants' foreheads to intentionally flatten their skulls, creating an elongated head shape seen as beautiful and noble. The deformity was a sign of high intelligence and divine connection. For the Maya, symmetry was lifeless. Distortion was divine art. Each child's skull became a sculpted crown, molded not by nature but by faith in sacred deformity. 18. In Elizabethan England, women used ceruse, a white paint made of lead and vinegar, to achieve porcelain skin. The toxic mixture corroded the flesh, creating sores that required even more makeup to cover. Queen Elizabeth I herself wore it daily, her beauty rotting beneath layers of deception. The face became both mask and graveyard, a slow ritual of dying for elegance. 19. In 19th century Ethiopia, members of the Mursi tribe practiced lip stretching as a symbol of strength and fertility. Young women pierced their lips and inserted clay plates that grew larger over time. The process was excruciating, yet the result, a massive ornamented lip, marked her worth, her endurance, her beauty. In that culture, pain wasn't hidden, it was honored. Beauty was what you could survive. 20. In medieval France, nobles bathed in wine and milk, believing it purified the soul and brightened the skin. Goat's milk softened the flesh, red wine awakened the spirit. Some even mixed crushed gemstones to absorb cosmic beauty. The ritual was both sensual and sacred, a rebirth in luxury. For them, bathing wasn't cleanliness, it was resurrection through decadence. 21. In ancient Greece, athletes covered their bodies in olive oil and dust before competing. The oil signified divine favor, the dust, mortality. Afterward, the mixture of sweat, oil, and grime, called *glorios*, was scraped off and sold as a beauty potion for women. The scent of men's struggle became perfume, their essence bottled for adoration. Beauty and strength mingled, turning desire itself into commerce. 22. In 16th century Spain, aristocratic women painted their veins blue on pale powdered skin to appear more delicately blooded. Blue veins meant purity, noble descent, and fragility. Some fainted deliberately in public to display refinement. Their weakness became theater, their sickness a performance of grace. The more ghost-like they appeared, the more they were admired, a culture where beauty meant looking half dead. 23. In ancient India, women stained their palms and feet with henna patterns during weddings and festivals. But the darkness of the stain foretold destiny. The deeper the red, the stronger the love, the longer the marriage. Brides slept with their hands hidden, guarding the design like a sacred omen. Each swirl of henna told a secret, the future whispered through pigment and patience. 24. In 18th century England, men padded their calves with wool or horsehair to create shapely legs under stockings. A man's calves were erotic currency, symbols of power and grace. Portraits flaunted them like modern abs. Tailors even specialized in leg enhancers. To seduce, one needed perfect legs. Beneath powdered wigs and silk breeches, vanity was universal and genderless. 25. In ancient Burma, Myanmar, women of the Padong tribe began wearing brass coils around their necks from childhood, pushing the collarbones downward to elongate the neck. The long neck symbolized beauty and wealth. Some wore over 20 pounds of brass. When removed, the muscles collapsed, making breathing difficult. Yet they wore the pain proudly, a crown of endurance shaped by culture's hand. 26. In 19th century Paris, men wore corsets to achieve slim waists and upright posture. Fashion journals called it the gentleman's armor. Beneath tailored suits, ribs were crushed and organs displaced. Yet suffering was elegance. Dandies strutted through salons with perfect symmetry, each breath a struggle hidden behind charm. Masculinity, it seemed, was another form of self-imposed suffocation. 27. In ancient Rome, women bleached their hair using goat fat and beechwood ashes, leaving it under the sun for hours. The process stank and burned, but golden hair meant divine allure, an imitation of northern captives admired for their beauty. Some even wore wigs made from the hair of enslaved Germans. Beauty in Rome was conquest woven into fashion. 28. In 17th century China, elite men grew long fingernails up to 6 inches, encased in jeweled protectors to show they did no manual labor. Their nails symbolized refinement, detachment from the physical world. Servants performed every task while masters lifted their hands like sacred relics. The longer the nails, the higher the soul, an art of uselessness turned divine. 29. In 18th century Poland, noblewomen painted tiny drops of lamb's blood on their cheeks before gatherings. Rouge was considered sinful vanity, but blood was natural. Some used the blood of sacrificed animals during full moons for spiritual charm. Their blush glowed with superstition, a beauty that bled for its purity. Each crimson mark whispered, "I suffer, therefore I am beautiful." 30. In ancient Thailand, women filed their teeth to sharp points and stained them black, using betel nut. White teeth were linked to demons, while black signified purity and control over desire. The ritual was agonizing, but the smile that followed was sacred, an emblem of discipline, not seduction. Their beauty didn't seduce. It restrained, like a vow sealed in darkness. 31. In 18th century France, women applied crushed nightingale droppings to their faces as a luxury facial treatment, known as the geisha mask. Later in Japan, it bleached and polished the skin to a porcelain sheen. Aristocrats swore by its glow, oblivious to its bacteria. Beauty became a strange alchemy. Waste turned into radiance. To shine like nobility, one had to wear the mark of filth with grace. 32. In ancient Mongolia, brides braided their hair into wing-shaped plumes, symbolizing freedom and spiritual balance. The style required days to craft and was adorned with coral, silver, and turquoise charms to ward off demons. The heavier the hair, the richer the spirit. Some braids stretched past the shoulders like wings ready to take flight, beauty that carried both burden and blessing. 33. In 16th century England, men applied lead-based powder mixed with vinegar to whiten their faces, then painted blue veins over it to mimic fragile aristocracy. The mixture corroded skin and caused hair loss, yet vanity triumphed. Even King Henry VIII reportedly wore it to appear younger. Nobility became performance, death disguised as youth, sickness reborn as grace. 34. In ancient Polynesia, tattoos called tatau marked both beauty and lineage. Women decorated their lips and thighs with intricate patterns, symbolizing strength, fertility, and identity. The process was agonizing, ink hammered into flesh with bone combs. Each line was a story, each scar an honor. Beauty wasn't worn, it was earned, through blood, pain, and ancestral pride. 35. In Victorian England, women used electric corsets, wired garments that promised vibrating vitality through low electric currents. Advertisements claimed they could cure fatigue, slim the waist, and reignite marital charm. In truth, they often burned skin and caused fainting. The fusion of electricity and vanity created one of history's strangest love affairs, science used not to heal, but to seduce. 36. In 17th century Japan, aristocrats prized pale skin with blue veins visible beneath. To achieve it, they dusted their faces with rice powder and indigo pigments, even drawing faint veins with brushes. The goal was translucence, a body that looked like moonlight incarnate. Beauty was not color, but absence, a fragile glow that seemed ready to vanish at dawn. 37. In ancient Celtic culture, warriors dyed their bodies with woad, a blue plant pigment before battle. The same dye was later used by women in rituals of attraction. Painted in blue spirals, they danced by firelight, believing the color made them irresistible to spirits and men alike. Beauty was wild, warlike, and sacred, a blend of blood and myth. 38. In 18th century Italy, upper-class women wore mouche de botte, tiny velvet patches cut into shapes like hearts, moons, or arrows, to highlight facial features. Yet beyond fashion, they became flirtation codes. A patch near the lips meant "kiss me," near the temple meant reserved. Every dot became a dialogue of desire. Seduction was geometric, love drawn in silk. 39. In ancient Egypt, women dyed their hair with henna mixed with donkey fat and blood to achieve a deep auburn shade symbolizing vitality. The scent was pungent, but the color divine. Mummies still bear traces of this fiery hue. For Egyptians, beauty wasn't vanity. It was eternal preparation for the afterlife. Even death demanded a perfect shade. 40. In 17th century France, lovers exchanged locks of hair sealed inside jeweled rings or lockets. Some even braided strands together as binding charms, believing the soul lived in the hair. After death, mourning lovers wore entire wreaths woven from their beloved's tresses. Love literally wrapped itself around the living, a haunting intimacy preserved beyond the grave. 41. In 19th century China, elite women used lead-based powders mixed with crushed pearls to create faces that shimmered like moonlight. The lead caused paralysis, but pale skin meant purity and privilege. Some even swallowed powdered pearls for inner brightness. The body became both poison and prayer, each glow a soft reflection of suffering, each shimmer a whisper of social power disguised as radiance. 42. In medieval England, unmarried women wore garlands of herbs and garlic in their hair during festivals to ward off lustful spirits. The smell was believed to repel temptation, protecting their virtue. Ironically, the foul odor made them physically undesirable, serving both superstition and social control. Purity was enforced by stench, and the crown of innocence came with decay's perfume. 43. In 16th century China, men painted their fingernails with gold lacquer, displaying power and refinement. The longer and glossier the nail, the higher one's intellect. Scholars kept servants to turn pages and hold cups. Hands became symbols of superiority, tools untouched by labor, yet adorned like idols. Their elegance lay not in what they could do, but in what they refused to touch. 44. In 18th century England, upper-class women used vinegar-soaked rags as corset liners to tighten their waists further. The acid softened skin and caused fainting, but it created the illusion of fragility, an aesthetic of weakness. Men admired the delicate collapse of a fainting lady as proof of refinement. Pain became theater and suffering, the language of grace. 45. In ancient Japan, nobles stained their lips crimson with safflower and charcoal, a shade called asterisk beni asterisk. The pigment symbolized vitality, but it was poisonous. Women repainted constantly, even as the pigment cracked their lips to bleeding. The contrast of white face and red mouth was sacred seduction. Beauty so perfect it had to destroy itself to stay divine. 46. In Renaissance France, women drank vinegar and chalk mixtures to maintain pallor. This famine beauty look made veins visible beneath thin skin, a sign of refinement. Some fainted daily, too weak to stand, yet praised for elegance. They lived in poetic decay, skeletons painted in lace, their starvation disguised as sophistication. 47. In ancient Aztec culture, both men and women pierced their tongues and earlobes to offer blood to the gods as proof of devotion. But high-ranking women smeared that blood on their faces as beauty paint. The red streaks symbolized courage and divinity. In their world, beauty wasn't decoration, it was sacred violence, a mirror that bled truth. 48. In Victorian Europe, women wore mourning jewelry made from the hair of the dead. Locks were woven into rings, brooches, and necklaces. Some even kept braided hair under glass pendants close to the heart. Beauty became memory, grief turned for ornament. Love after death wasn't silence, it was wearable sorrow carried like a heartbeat. 49. In ancient China, eunuchs applied flower oils and rouge to mimic femininity within palace courts. Their flawless beauty became a political weapon, earning favor through charm and disguise. Yet beneath the cosmetics was mutilation, a body reshaped for power's theater. Every stroke of rouge hid sacrifice, every fragrance masked pain. Beauty was both rebellion and survival. 50. In 18th century England, widows powdered their hair gray on purpose, even if young, to display mourning. But soon, gray became fashionable among elites. What began as grief turned to glamour. Death's color crowned the living. The irony was exquisite. The shade of sorrow became a symbol of sophistication. Mourning had become beautiful, and the world applauded decay.